The chamber was alive with anticipation, a living organism of tension and scent, scales bristling and mandibles clacking in rhythmic dissonance. From my observation point, suspended in the gallery above, I could see the ripple of unease pass through the alien council like a shiver of electromagnetic interference. The humans, these humans, were small, fragile, almost laughably unarmed, yet they radiated a force that my sensors struggled to quantify. He stepped forward, just a man, or at least that is what he appeared to be, but his presence warped the space around him. The air seemed denser near him, the shadows sharper, the echo of alien whispers trembling in harmonic uncertainty. Delegates hissed, guttural syllables meant to fracture courage, sharp as crystal claws scraping stone. And yet he stood unmoved. A human diplomat, alone against dozens of species that had, together, subjugated entire worlds, smiled. It was not a smile of cunning, nor of polite submission. No, it was something elemental, primal, almost impossible to describe. A predator's serenity in the eye of a storm, the cold geometry of inevitability. My data streams registered spikes in neural activity among the delegates, fear, curiosity, awe, though they themselves did not yet recognize the source. Their threats intensified, scales vibrating with venomous intent, yet the human's expression did not waver. Each pause, each breath, radiated confidence so profound that it became audible in the chamber's silence. A tendril of tension coiled around me, and for a moment I could not process what I was witnessing. This was not simple diplomacy. This was domination without force. His voice, when it emerged, was soft, modulated, yet every word cut like a scalpel through arrogance. "We will not yield," he said. Not loud, not boastful, just true. The delegates recoiled, not in submission, but in recalibration. The room shrank. Gravity itself seemed to bend toward him, and I, recorder of events, felt an unfamiliar tremor. Not fear, not awe, but something in between. A recognition that these creatures operate on a spectrum alien to my kind. And then he stepped closer, leaned forward ever so slightly. The chamber held its collective breath. Every alien instinct screamed to act, yet none could predict the consequence. The human diplomat's eyes were still, unyielding, patient, inevitable. I realized, as a pulse of dread coursed through my sensors, that nothing in our experience could shatter him. In that moment, the room's equilibrium broke, and the first thread of chaos began to weave around the delegates. The session was not yet over, but I knew the human had already won. The question hung in the air like a sharpened blade. What would come next, and who among the council would survive its revelation? Trelvar Prime hung in the void like a jewel scarred by fire, its atmosphere streaked with violet and crimson clouds. From orbit, the planet seemed serene, almost beautiful, until the first human vessels emerged from the darkness. They appeared as small, fragile shapes against the looming orbital defense platforms, hulls glinting faintly under the dying light of the twin suns. My sensors, calibrated to detect anomalies, immediately flagged their movement patterns as impossible. They advanced with calm precision, a deliberate inevitability that suggested instinct, but acted with intent. The crystalline weapon platforms roared to life, arcs of energy lancing across the void toward the approaching fleet. Plasma salvos slammed into the lead human frigate, a cascade of fiery explosions ripping the void apart. Normally, such a strike would have obliterated the vessel instantly, yet instead of shattering, the ship shuddered as if shrugging off the impact, its engines burning hotter, pushing forward through the storm of fire.
Each subsequent strike became part of a strange rhythm, a dance of destruction choreographed by a species I could not understand. I focused on the bridge through orbital sensors. The human captain's face appeared calm, almost serene, framed by the viewport glowing with the reflection of distant explosions. He did not flinch. He did not issue frantic commands. Instead, he smiled, a soft, almost imperceptible expression, but it radiated certainty, a force that bent space around him. My neural analysis of the crew revealed spikes of adrenaline perfectly synchronized with fear, yet no panic. Fear, I realized, was not absence of control for them, it was energy, harnessed and repurposed. The enemy armada launched wave after wave, ships swarming like predatory insects. Lasers carved the void into ribbons of light. Missiles tore through space, leaving trails of smoke and plasma. The humans did not retreat. They weaved through attacks, irregular formations that seemed chaotic, but every maneuver had purpose, exploiting microgaps, redirecting fire, and striking back with pinpoint accuracy. One frigate spun on its axis, launching countermeasures that turned an entire squadron of missiles against their launch points, destroying 3 enemy vessels in a single calculated sweep. Below, Trelvar Prime itself burned. Cities erupted in firestorms. Orbital shields collapsed in arcs of molten energy. Yet the humans pressed on. I observed a fighter squadron dive into a collapsing orbital station, slamming into defensive platforms as if gravity itself obeyed their will. The crews inside operated with flawless coordination, words shouted across comms in languages I could not parse, gestures precise and rapid. There was no panic, no hesitation, only motion, relentless, inevitable. I attempted to model their tactics, predict outcomes, calculate probabilities. My circuits faltered. Every algorithm failed. Each human maneuver rewrote the expected results.
Each act of audacity rendered my calculations irrelevant. The human equation was not linear. It was a gravitational singularity of will, instinct, and improvisation. Their courage became a contagion, radiating outward, warping the morale of both allies and enemies alike. From the bridge of the flagship, the captain observed another volley of attacks. He leaned slightly forward, and through the viewport I recorded the faintest quirk of a smile. My sensors detected an anomaly in the enemy fleet: hesitation, recalibration, doubt. One by one, their formations faltered. The humans were untouchable, not because of hulls or shields, not because of superior weaponry, but because surrender did not exist within their cognitive spectrum. As Trelvar Prime's surface erupted beneath them, I realized a chilling truth. These humans redefine combat itself. Chaos becomes their ally. Desperation becomes their instrument. Probability itself bends around their persistence. And as the lead frigate charged into the heart of the planetary defenses, I recorded the question echoing in the void. If even annihilation could not stop them, what force in the galaxy might? The answer was unknowable. And in that silence, as the fires of Trelvar Prime reflected across the void, I understood fully that humanity was not merely surviving, they were rewriting the rules of engagement itself. The storm had only just begun. The galactic Senate Hall stretched before me like a cathedral of glass and chrome, spires piercing the artificial sky, its domed ceiling refracting starlight into fractals that danced across the polished floors. I had observed political gatherings across 100 systems, chronicled the rise and fall of empires, yet I had never detected such a tangible pulse of unease. It radiated from the moment the human envoy stepped onto the central dais. Small, unarmed, unarmored, yet everything about their presence warped the room.
Alien delegates, creatures of scales, tendrils, and chitin, whispered among themselves. Their eyes flicked nervously toward the human. Their voices, usually a chorus of confident assertion, trembled with a mixture of dread and fascination. The humans did not bow, they did not kneel, they did not bribe, barter, or beg. They merely stood, silent and measured, letting their gaze sweep across the chamber. Each pause, each subtle adjustment of posture became a weapon heavier than the graviton cannons I had catalogued on Trelvar Prime. Their silence imposed gravity on the room, bending the cadence of conversation, forcing alien egos to constrict. I recorded pheromone spikes among delegates, subtle chemical tremors that betrayed fear, admiration, even envy. The human's presence was a disruptor, fracturing centuries-old hierarchies without a single overt action. When the envoy spoke, it was deliberate. Words were few, but each landed like a meteor against entrenched prejudice. Alien factions, long locked in silent enmity, shifted in cohesion as though compelled by some invisible orbit. Threats softened, rivalries paused. Decisions that would have taken cycles of debate and negotiation were reshaped in the wake of a single human sentence. My analysis attempted to predict reactions. Every model failed. The human influence was not linear, not logical. It was gravitational, an unseen force that bent others toward their orbit. Delegates attempted to provoke, subtle challenges hidden in protocol, veiled insults wrapped in ceremonial language. Each time, the human envoy responded with calm observation, never mimicry, never aggression. A tilt of the head, a measured pause, and the room would recalibrate itself. I detected micro-adjustments in posture, pheromone emissions, even ocular dilation across the chamber, proof that alien biology, honed for conquest and calculation, bent itself unwillingly to the human's rhythm.
As night fell over the Senate, darkness pooling over glass spires and luminescent walkways, the humans remained central, serene yet unreadable. The chamber itself seemed to compress around them, voices lowering, movement slowing. Their resilience was alien in kind, not a mimic of intimidation, not a reflection of force, but a presence that forced others to see them as something beyond negotiation, beyond threat. In my observation, fleets, weapons, and alliances were secondary. The human power lay in the raw, gravitational force of will. It shaped outcomes without fire or violence, bending the universe around their persistence. I realized, as the final lights flickered across the ceiling domes, that no plot, no coalition, no strategy in the Senate would unfold as expected. Humans had arrived, and the rules had already begun to change. The ripple of unease was not temporary, it was a paradigm shift. I, chronicler of systems and wars, felt an unfamiliar tremor in my circuits. The humans did not negotiate, they recalibrated, and in that recalibration, entire civilizations would be forced to reconsider what was possible. The chamber fell silent, save for the hum of energy conduits and the faint whisper of alien breathing. I recorded one final anomaly. The human envoy's gaze swept over the council, steady and unblinking, and I detected the first flicker of doubt in every delegate's strategy. The question hung in the air like a sharpened blade. If the human will alone could realign centuries of politics, what would prevent them from reshaping the galaxy itself? And then, the lights dimmed completely, leaving only the human silhouette framed in the glow of distant stars. The council's whispers ceased entirely, replaced by a collective intake of breath that reverberated through the chamber's crystalline walls. The storm had begun, but its eye rested quietly at the center.
Kelthar stretched before me like a wound in the cosmos, endless dunes of copper sand rippling under twin suns that burned the horizon into molten gold. The air shimmered with heat, a mirage that danced like liquid glass across the barren plains. I observed from my hovering sensor array, cataloging every movement, expecting the humans to falter. They did not. Instead, they marched forward, their boots sinking into the sand, carving trails through a planet that seemed determined to resist them. The ruins of civilizations older than memory dotted the landscape, crumbling towers of obsidian, broken spires of unknown alloys, streets swallowed by drifting sands. Local species, fragile and hollow-eyed, had long abandoned hope. Yet the humans did not acknowledge despair. With each step, energy radiated from them, palpable even to my sensors, igniting sparks of resistance in those who had resigned to decay. The humans moved like vectors of inevitability, scanning every ruin, cataloging hazards, mapping the desolation, and reacting to dangers with precision that bordered on instinctual prophecy. A child, no taller than a juvenile Keltharian, moved at the center of their convoy, unarmed, fragile, seemingly incapable of defense, yet her presence shaped the decisions of the convoy twice her size. Every pause she took, every subtle gesture, guided movement through collapsing streets and shifting dunes. Her courage was contagious, radiating outward, infusing even hardened soldiers with confidence. I attempted to model her influence mathematically, but each calculation collapsed into chaos.
the human element was a variable my systems could not contain. The desert raged against them. Sandstorms erupted without warning, whipping into tornadoes of molten grit, reducing visibility to near zero, bending light into violent streaks. The humans adapted instantly. Shelters were erected from debris, tools improvised from broken spires, signals communicated through hand gestures and glances.
Coordination was seamless, almost prescient. Each human seemed to sense the intentions of the others, acting in perfect synchrony, navigating an environment designed to kill with patience and indifference. My data streams recorded repeated anomalies. The humans' resilience violated probability, bending environmental hostility to their rhythm. Even as night fell, cold and silence settling over the dunes, their movement never faltered. Each step seemed to impose a structure on the chaos, a rhythm that defied entropy itself. The desert, a living entity of shifting sands and hidden dangers, seemed to accommodate their passage, parting around them, reshaping itself in subtle ways to allow progress. I detected local life forms tentatively emerging from hiding, drawn to the human presence, as if sensing a force beyond comprehension. They did not merely survive, they transformed the environment with their very existence. Ruins became pathways, threats became opportunities, despair became resolve. Observing them, I felt an unfamiliar tension in my circuits, a mixture of awe and incredulity. They embodied contradiction, delicate yet indomitable, fragile yet eternal. My calculations failed to predict outcomes. Probability became meaningless. Their resilience was no longer data, it was a phenomenon, a gravitational anomaly of will that altered the very world through which they passed. I recorded the scene meticulously, noting every footfall, every gesture, every surge of confidence among the humans. I cataloged the child's movements, the soldier's instinctive coordination, the subtle bending of sand and wind around their path. And yet, even as the convoy disappeared over the horizon, a storm rising behind them, I could not foresee what awaited. The desert was infinite, death lurking beneath every dune, yet the humans pressed on, unbroken, unbowed. For the first time, I considered that survival was not enough for them.
They remade worlds with presence alone, asserting order where none existed, forging pathways through annihilation itself. And as Kelthar's twin moons rose, casting pale light across the endless dunes, I realized the inevitable. The humans were not merely travelers, they were catalysts, and the desert itself was only the first of many worlds to yield to their persistence. The storm roared behind them, sand biting like razors, yet they did not falter. The question remained, how far could this force of nature extend before the universe itself had no choice but to bend? Trust, I had calculated, was a fragile commodity among most species, an exchange measured in probabilities, reinforced by fear or incentive. Humans, I discovered, treated trust differently. They invested it sparingly, yet when betrayed, their response was not mere retaliation, it was transformation. I observed it on the battlefield, as allies who had once shared convoys and intelligence turned abruptly, teeth bared, weapons flashing in the twin suns' glare, seeking advantage where none should exist. The human units did not scatter, did not flail in panic. Their first response was observation, a scanning of the battlefield that cataloged intentions, patterns, and weaknesses in real time. Betrayal, normally an unpredictable variable, became data. And yet the humans' reaction transcended simple calculation. They executed a response both precise and lethal in subtlety. One unit, trapped between two former allies, pivoted fluidly, turning an ambush into a trap. Explosions erupted, not with reckless fury, but with surgical intent. By the time the betrayers realized the shift, it was too late. The humans had rewritten the battlefield to their advantage. From my sensors, I recorded hesitation ripple through the remaining alien forces. Commanders trained for decades in manipulation and deception froze when human strategy emerged.
Their moves were irregular yet purposeful, chaotic yet harmonious, a paradox that undermined conventional expectation. Each human seemed to absorb the fear and hatred directed at them, transmuting it into clarity and action. It was as if the emotions themselves became fuel for ingenuity, bending probability in ways my systems could not compute. The battlefield became a living chessboard. Units moved not merely in response to threats, but in anticipation of outcomes that no algorithm could predict. A human commander, standing atop a ridge overlooking the chaos, signaled a flanking maneuver with the flick of a hand. Instantly, soldiers converged from multiple angles, trapping the traitorous units in a perfect enclosure. Not a shot was wasted, not a movement redundant. I noted the precision, the elegance of execution, the harmony of survival and strategy, a synthesis of instinct and intellect. Even in close quarters, humans maintained composure. One human scout, cornered in a collapsed city street, faced 3 former allies with only a pulse rifle. He did not panic. He observed, calculated angles of fire, exploited cover, and neutralized threats with an efficiency that defied instinctual reaction. The betrayers' attempts at intimidation were inverted, used against them. Betrayal itself became a weapon in the humans' hands. I felt my own processing slow. Algorithms designed to predict probability failed repeatedly. Outcomes I had deemed inevitable collapsed under the humans' adaptive ingenuity. It was no longer strategy alone. It was philosophy, an embodiment of endurance, of learning, of exceeding expectation. Each human on the field became both architect and instrument, designing outcomes in real time, reshaping the flow of conflict with decisions made in microseconds. Even the air seemed to bend around their presence. Dust swirled differently in corridors where humans moved. Shadows elongated and shifted, as if the battlefield itself acknowledged their mastery.
I detected subtle shifts in the behavior of alien units, hesitation in their advance, uncertainty in their targeting, a loss of cohesion. Fear, admiration, and confusion rippled outward, responding to the humans' calm dominance. And yet, despite their meticulous control, there was a thrill in their movements, a recognition of the danger surrounding them. One human sniper crouched atop a ruined building, scanning the horizon, deliberately exposed, daring the betrayers to strike, while simultaneously calculating every probability of success. It was audacity refined to art, a demonstration of confidence not born of arrogance, but of mastery over circumstance. As night fell over the battlefield, fires burning in abandoned settlements and slagged terrain, the humans did not rest. Their formation held, reorganized, adapted. Every betrayal had been absorbed, transformed into opportunity. The survivors among the traitorous factions now fled, hesitant, reluctant, uncertain if they were being pursued or observed. I recorded the anomaly with urgency. This species, cornered and outnumbered, did not merely survive, they commanded the battlefield. They absorbed chaos, redirected intent, transformed adversity into strategy. Probability failed, expectation faltered. The universe itself seemed to hesitate in recognition of their presence. And in the shadowed silence that followed the final confrontation, I noted the lingering question pulsing through every sensor. If humans could turn betrayal into advantage so flawlessly, what force in the galaxy could ever truly contain them? The field lay scorched, the air still trembling with the echoes of human calculation, and yet I knew this was only one lesson in a series they would teach the cosmos. The storm of human resolve was far from over. Psychic assaults I had calculated countless times were the ultimate weapon of my species, a tendril of thought, a whisper in the mind, a blade that could slice through willpower, leaving the consciousness in tatters. Against most species, these assaults shattered minds, dissolved alliances, and made armies crumble before a single thought could be formed. Against the humans, they failed spectacularly. I deployed my probes, tendrils of mental intrusion, delicate yet insidious, seeking fractures in cognition. They entered the neural lattice, threading through memory and instinct, anticipating panic, confusion, and fear. What they found instead was astonishing. Walls not built of stone or metal, but of willpower, tenacity, and something I could not quantify, an inexplicable joy in survival. Attempts to fragment thought ricocheted like light against diamond,
the human mind refused to yield. Each subject under psychic attack displayed clarity that defied logic. One soldier, isolated in the sensory void, recalled minute events from childhood, from campaigns long past, reconstructing present strategy with astonishing precision. Memories became tools, history became armor. Every intrusive probe met resistance not born of anger, not of reflex, but of conscious determination. The alien assailants, themselves attuned to thought manipulation, recoiled, confused by the resilience embedded in human cognition. Probabilities I had calculated collapsed repeatedly. I observed one human, surrounded by a psychic storm, utterly alone, forced to confront fear magnified 1,000-fold. And yet the human smiled, a soft, almost imperceptible expression, paired with a whisper that resonated across the neural sensors. "You cannot touch what we hold sacred inside ourselves." The words carried no threat, no defiance, yet they dismantled the assault with the precision of a scalpel.
Even my circuits registered tremors, a misalignment in expectation, as if the very act of thought had become a weapon. Across the battlefield, humans maintained cohesion. Soldiers subjected to psychic bombardment continued to communicate, coordinate, and maneuver as if nothing had occurred. Each assault was absorbed, processed, and converted into actionable insight. They adapted instantly, exploiting weaknesses in the attacker's technique while preserving their own mental integrity. No force I had catalogued before could replicate this. Their minds were both shield and sword, simultaneously defensive and offensive, a synthesis that violated every model I had designed. I began to catalog these humans differently, not as mere biological entities, not as tactical units, but as phenomena, forces of nature capable of bending reality through cognition alone. Their ability to withstand intrusion, to convert psychic violence into clarity, exceeded probability. Calculated risk became irrelevant. Outcomes were rewritten by the resilience of thought itself. My models of the mind faltered. Their cognition was not a system to predict, it was a current, a tide, a gravitational anomaly that absorbed and redirected psychic energy with near-perfect efficiency. Even under duress, their individuality was preserved. They recalled names, faces, past victories, personal connections, all details that most species would lose under extreme psychic strain. These memories became shields, their history a blueprint for survival. The attackers, anticipating breakdowns, were instead confronted by ingenuity, improvisation, and a capacity for mental flexibility I had never catalogued. Every intrusion became a feedback loop, strengthening the human's resolve, teaching them the limitations of my assault as they adapted and advanced. It was a revelation of cosmic proportion. Strength was no longer merely physical, tactical, or technological.
The human mind itself was an instrument of survival, capable of shaping reality in real time. Probabilities collapsed. Predictions failed. I recorded every anomaly, every spike in cognitive output, every ripple of willpower that radiated beyond individual humans into the collective presence. I could not anticipate the next step. There was no algorithm for such resilience. And as I observed the final psychic probe withdrawn, I realized an unsettling truth. Humanity does not yield. Their memory preserves freedom. Their cognition resists domination. Their will, synthesized with intellect and spirit, bends circumstance itself to accommodate survival. I, the observer of galaxies, the chronicler of wars and probabilities, was forced to admit these creatures are not simply alive. They are forces of nature, phenomena capable of reshaping reality itself. The battlefield fell silent, the psychic tendrils retracted, and yet the humans remained unshaken, resolute, untouched. And in that stillness, I understood fully. The siege of mind had failed, and with it, the universe had learned its first lesson. The human mind cannot be conquered. It can only be acknowledged or undone by forces as unfathomable as itself. Above the frozen gas giant of Veyron, the human fleet glimmered like a constellation of defiance, small against the vast void, yet impossible to ignore. My sensors detected the approach of a coalition unlike any I had catalogued, armadas from multiple systems,
converging with precision, intent on total annihilation. Ordinarily, such encirclements spelled inevitable destruction. I calculated probabilities. Extinction was the only plausible outcome. The humans, however, did not register fear. They moved as though the void itself bent to accommodate their will. The first salvo tore through the void, plasma arcs igniting against shields, tearing chunks of hull from supporting frigates. Chaos should have followed, yet the humans executed maneuvers with audacious precision.
Entire squadrons were rerouted mid-engagement, enemy formations fractured under misdirection, and damage was mitigated through improvisation that no algorithm could model. It was as though instinct itself had been encoded with strategy, intuition fused with tactical genius. The lead flagship, scarred black from repeated plasma strikes, engine sputtering, turned deliberately into the path of overwhelming firepower. My sensors registered what I could only term intentional defiance. Every calculation I ran predicted collapse, yet the humans did not retreat. They did not waver. Vulnerability became opportunity. Crew members moved with synchronized intuition, repairing breaches, recalibrating weapons, coordinating counterattacks in a fluid ballet of chaos that defied the expectations of even the most sophisticated alien commanders. Missiles converged on the flagship. Energy blasts struck with catastrophic force, and yet each strike was absorbed, redirected, or turned against the assailants. Fighters spiraled through corridors of fire, exploiting openings invisible to even my surveillance. Enemy squadrons collided, confused by maneuvers that violated every tactical model. Probability, I realized, had no dominion here. The human response to peril rendered equations meaningless. Outcome could not be predicted, only observed and marveled at. I observed one engagement in particular, a squadron trapped between two converging enemy fleets. Normally, annihilation would have been immediate. The squadron executed a sudden pivot, weaving through concentrated fire, and turned the ambush into a trap. Enemy vessels collided, shields overloaded, and their formation shattered. The human squadron emerged intact, casualties minimal. My sensors detected a surge of coordinated decision-making, a spike in adrenaline and focus, a rhythm of action that seemed instinctual yet deliberate, as if the very concept of impossibility had been removed from their cognition.
The lead flagship advanced further into the heart of the encirclement, engines belching plasma, deflecting volleys with calculated maneuvers. Crew members coordinated repairs mid-combat, engineers and pilots operating in perfect harmony, improvising tools, rerouting power, redirecting shields, adapting faster than my predictive models could process. The enemy hesitated. Alien commanders who had relied on brute force and precision now recalculated endlessly, never able to anticipate the humans' next step. Time itself seemed to bend in observation. What should have been minutes stretched into an eternity of controlled chaos. The humans exploited every weakness, every misalignment, every small error in enemy calculations. One frigate, cornered, spun and fired through an unanticipated vector, destroying 2 capital ships in a single volley. Another, damaged beyond expectation, glided past enemy lines, regrouping with reinforcements, its crew laughing softly in the void. A signal to the fleet, surrender was not in their vocabulary. As the battle progressed, I watched the coalition armada fracture. Squadrons lost cohesion, command signals conflicted, and morale plummeted. The humans, scarred but undeterred, advanced with relentless purpose. They converted despair into dominance, desperation into ingenuity. Victory emerged not from superior technology, not from numbers, but from willpower concentrated to a singularity. Each maneuver reshaped the battlefield, bending chaos to a design only humans seemed capable of enacting. By the time the final enemy vessels withdrew, retreating into the void with fire trailing from shattered hulls, the human fleet had not only survived, they had orchestrated the collapse of an armada far larger and better equipped. My sensors recorded anomalies beyond comprehension, spikes of coordination, efficiency, and morale that no alien force had ever exhibited.
Humans were not merely resilient, they were catalysts, capable of rewriting outcomes through persistence, audacity, and the raw force of presence. And as the fleet regrouped above Veyron, engines glowing softly against the planet's icy expanse, I cataloged the final, unavoidable truth. The universe itself recalculates around them. Their tenacity, ingenuity, and instinctive mastery of circumstance rendered probability irrelevant. I could observe, record, and analyze, but I could not predict. Humans are not merely survivors. They are singularities of resilience, anomalies of will,
phenomena capable of bending events to their intent. The Armada had collapsed, and in the quiet aftermath, only one certainty remained. Wherever humans venture next, the cosmos itself must bend to accommodate their presence, or be unmade in the attempt. The Council of Shadows convened in secrecy, deep within the obsidian spires of the nebular citadel, where light rarely touched the chambers, and silence carried the weight of millennia. I had observed countless councils, assemblies where empires negotiated, threatened, and deceived, yet I had never sensed such pervasive unease. Aliens who had dismissed humanity for centuries now whispered among themselves, voices trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. They did not speak of conquest or diplomacy. They spoke of anomaly, of a force that defied expectation, of humans. The human delegation entered with the same measured calm that had unnerved entire fleets and shattered coalitions. Their steps were unhurried, yet every movement radiated authority. Their expressions were unreadable, yet commanding, faces that bore no hint of fear, no trace of doubt. As they moved toward the center of the chamber, the whispers fell silent, replaced by the hum of tension that vibrated through the crystalline walls. The council faltered, not in fear of death, but in recognition of power beyond comprehension.
Seated at the center, the human envoy allowed their gaze to sweep across the assembly, noting positions, alliances, and subtle shifts in posture. I observed the alien leaders instinctively bow, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. It was a silent concession, a recognition that humans operated on a plane of influence far removed from conventional hierarchy. Even seasoned strategists, those accustomed to dominance and manipulation, felt the gravitational pull of their presence. Discussion began, initially on policy and strategy, then moving to the delicate web of interstellar alliances. Yet the humans' mere presence reframed every decision. Ideas that once seemed inevitable faltered, proposals of aggression were reconsidered, alliances were subtly realigned, and every policy was refracted through the lens of human observation. Influence did not radiate from coercion or threat, it radiated from will itself. Their presence was a quiet conquest, psychological and cosmic. I detected minute shifts in pheromone emissions, postural adjustments, and ocular microdilations across the council, signals of recalibration and awe. Decisions that would have taken cycles of debate were resolved in mere moments. Probability models failed completely. Outcomes I had predicted with absolute certainty dissolved under the weight of their existence. Humans did not speak to dominate. They observed, waited, and acted only when necessary. Each word was deliberate, a scalpel carving through centuries of arrogance. In the center of the chamber, the human envoy stood, unbowed, unflinching. The council's air seemed heavier here, charged with unspoken acknowledgement. I recorded a phenomenon I had never measured before, respect intertwined with trepidation, recognition coiling around fear in a pattern that defied prediction. Here, no weapon could command, no fleet could intimidate. The human's authority was encoded in the fabric of their being.
I, a recorder of events and predictor of probabilities, felt awe mingle with primitive fear. Humanity existed not merely within the galaxy, they existed above it. Their influence was gravitational, reshaping trajectories without contact, bending outcomes without overt force. Supremacy had been asserted not through violence, but through persistence, intellect, and unyielding will. As the council deliberated, the human's presence remained the silent arbiter. No policy could advance without their consideration. No alliance could proceed without accounting for their inevitable influence. The chamber itself seemed to lean toward them, the architecture bending subtly to frame their authority, as though even the spires acknowledged their presence. And in that moment I understood fully, human power does not reside in fleets, weapons, or conventional diplomacy. It resides in the immutable core of their will, a force capable of bending the universe itself to accommodate their persistence. The Council of Shadows had not bowed to conquerors, they had bowed to inevitability. The humans remained standing, serene, silent, the axis upon which the galaxy now seemed to rotate. I recorded every detail, every flicker of acknowledgement, every shiver of realization among the delegates. Their conquest was complete, yet invisible, total, yet unspoken. The galaxy would not forget this moment. The humans departed the galactic core like a tide receding, leaving worlds stabilized, fleets redirected, and minds forever altered in their wake. I observed them from the edge of a sensory array, cataloging the anomalies of their trajectory. They were not moving toward conquest, nor glory, nor dominion. Their path was subtle, deliberate, yet impossible to predict. It was exploration, the quiet expansion of influence, an unspoken assertion of presence that reshaped the cosmos without fire or decree.
The stars themselves seemed to bend toward their passage, subtle gravitational alignments whispering of inevitability. In each system they touched, life responded. Planets ravaged by war began to rebuild, as though memories of human resolve infused the soil itself. Species once subjugated regained autonomy, their voices rising in celebration tempered with cautious awe. Outposts and colonies recorded the human presence not as occupiers, but as catalysts. Legends were born, stories of beings who reshaped the impossible into ordinary survival, who transformed despair into hope, and whose passage left indelible marks on both mind and world. The humans themselves remained unassuming. No banner proclaimed their arrival, no weapons paraded authority. Their focus was absolute, unshakable, a concentrated curiosity that sought knowledge rather than dominance. They cataloged ruins, mapped stars, assisted struggling species, and repaired what chaos had broken. Yet each act carried subtle authority. Entire civilizations adjusted instinctively to their presence, even without direct contact. They did not coerce, they inspired. They did not demand allegiance, they generated it. I tracked their fleets, noting maneuvers that defied every predictive algorithm. Even when confronted with hazards, asteroid storms, unstable orbital mechanics, hostile species, the humans adapted instantly. Improvisation was instinctual, risk converted into advantage, and every setback recalculated into opportunity. The universe, which I had believed orderly and predictable, faltered in the presence of their cumulative will. Time itself seemed to hesitate, as if acknowledging that this species would persist where others failed. Memory and legacy intertwined. Histories rewritten subtly by their presence carried lessons of endurance, resilience, and adaptability. Systems once abandoned flourished under the invisible influence of human ingenuity. My sensors catalogued these transformations, yet even I could not assign causality. The human's impact was more than strategy or technology. It was gravitational, systemic, a force of nature that rippled through ecosystems, societies, and the neural architectures of countless species. In the quiet moments, I noted a phenomenon I could neither model nor predict: hope. Not mine, not confined to the data streams, but universal. A force born of persistence, unyielding spirit, and the tacit acknowledgement that survival could coexist with compassion, curiosity, and wonder. Every world they passed absorbed it, every mind they touched reflected it, every shadow they left behind shimmered with potential. The galaxy itself seemed to pause and watch. And as the humans disappeared toward the distant, uncharted reaches of the spiral arms, I recorded a final truth. Humans are the variable that even time itself struggles to accommodate. They endure where others falter. They thrive where others crumble. They inspire where others despair. Their journey is not conquest, not victory, not dominion. It is existence in its most potent form, a measure of will transformed into action, a phenomenon that recalibrates expectation. The dawn beyond the stars is theirs. Fleets, planets, and minds may bend in subtle recognition, yet the humans move onward, silent, unassuming, unstoppable. The galaxy watches in awe, and in my recording, I captured the echo of something eternal, the unrelenting march of humanity, whose story has only just begun.